Welcome to Ted's Timely Take. Evolution Weekend, that's our topic. We Christians love the truth. If we're going to believe things about God and the world, we want to make doggone sure that it's true. And so natural science becomes a natural ally to Christian belief. Now they say there's a war going on between science and religion. I'm here to tell you there ain't no war between science and religion. Oh yeah, there's a battle going on, but every army in this battle loves science. There isn't anybody who wants the demise of science. No religious person wants the demise of science. So we've got to understand who's fighting with whom about what. Well, let me try to give you a picture from the war zone. There are actually 5 armies in this battle over evolution, not just religion and science. And let me list them. Here's the first one. Materialist Atheism. There are those among us who want to believe that the material world, the physical world, is all there is. There ain't no more. There's something wrong with religion because it teaches people to believe false things about non-existent spiritual reality, miracles, and things like that. Also, religion is the source of the world's violence. And materialist atheists in our time like to think that science supports their doctrine of there's no God and that the material world is the only reality. So that's one army which is opposed to religion, and of the weapons that get fired, one is religion is anti-science. So that's number one. Number 2, the scientists in their laboratories. The scientists in their laboratories rely on facts and good theories, and they produce new knowledge. And when it comes to evolutionary theory of the Charles Darwin type, does that count as good science? You betcha it does. Now, let me just remind you of what Charles Darwin contributed. Darwin asked the question, how did we get so many different species of plants and animals on our planet? And he came up with an answer. Variation in inheritance, acted upon by natural selection, causes the forms of life to change over long periods of time. That was his basic insight. Now, you know, if you have brothers and sisters from the same mommy and same daddy, you look kind of alike, but there are some differences. That's variation in inheritance, and that happens throughout the plant and animal kingdoms. And over time, nature selects some of those inherited traits for survival, and others go extinct. And over long periods of time, species change. This theory appears to be confirmed and reconfirmed, and it counts as good science. Darwin did not ask the question about the origin of life. That's a widespread piece of false news. He said at least 4 times in his major book of 1859 called The Origin of Species. I have no idea how life originated, but I can tell you how new species originate. Now, this theory is not only helpful in understanding the history of life on planet Earth, but it's a resource for medical researchers to help us overcome the danger of viruses which evolve almost right before our eyes in the microscopes. We need Darwin's theory in the laboratory if we're going to come up with new medicines. Now, is it possible to be a laboratory scientist using Darwin's theory for medical advance and not be a materialist atheist? Of course. There are many religious people in our biological laboratories doing wonderful things, and they do not have to buy into the anti-religious ideology. So that's two armies: atheist materialism and laboratory science. The third one is creationism. And creationism usually appears in our more conservative churches, Catholic and Protestant, and in some cases Orthodox, and even in Islam. And there are two types of creationism: the biblical type and the scientific type. Both the biblical creationists and the scientific creationists believe that all of the species that we can find on Earth did not evolve over time, but rather were created as they are between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. The biblical creationists rely on the authority of the Bible, whereas the scientific creationists try to give evidence from science that the biblical testimony is correct. Note, neither biblical creationists nor scientific creationists want to see science destroyed. They're not the enemies of science. In fact, what they say is they want better science. So we've looked at three now: atheist materialism, we've looked at laboratory research, we've looked at the creationists. Then the fourth army in the battle is the intelligent design school of thought. According to intelligent design theorists, there could be evolution of species over time, but what's so interesting is that newer species, by and large, are more complex than their predecessor species. And these complex organisms look like they are designed. You know, a Volkswagen is designed by engineers. Well, a jellyfish looks like it was designed as well because it's so complex. And if a Volkswagen requires a human engineer to design it, then the jellyfish requires a designer. Who's that designer? Oh, we don't know scientifically, but it could be God. Now, both the creationists and the intelligent design people want science to be better. Neither one is anti-science, even though my good friends, who are your laboratory scientific researchers, will say that what the creationists claim and what the intelligent design people claim is bad science. Well, I'd rather have bad science than anti-science. Okay, the fifth in our group of armies that are fighting are the theistic evolutionists. Theism, of course, means belief in God. Evolutionism, well, what does that mean? It means, at minimum, we accept the value and veracity of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. At maximum, we can re-envision the whole story of God's creation so that evolution becomes the means that God uses to create the human race, and that there's a divine purpose running through evolution that leads from those simple organisms 3.8 or 9 billion years ago right up to intelligent human beings. And God's purpose is worked out through evolution. Those are the theistic evolutionists. Love science, right? And to feel that what science has revealed actually contributes to our understanding of God's work in the world. Well, I have a lot of sympathy for the laboratory scientists. In fact, I'm happy to hang medals around their neck and shake their hands and thank them for the wonderful work they do. I have more sympathy for the creationists and intelligent design people than most of my friends do, even though I will have to say I think their science is bad science, but at least they're not anti-science. No, if I'm going to go to a barbecue, it's going to be with a theistic evolutionists. But that doesn't mean I want to baptize Darwinian theory and say, oh, now it's a Christian doctrine. On Judgment Day, I got some problems that I want to take up with God. I want to say, God, if in fact you used those billions of years of evolutionary development in order to create human beings with souls who could join you in the kingdom of God, I want to know why there is so much suffering, why species had to go extinct. Why is it that my cat Leona goes out into the field and kills mice and those mice suffer? If you're a creator God, why couldn't you have done it a nicer way? And I predict God is going to respond to me like he did to Job in a whirlwind. Where were you when I created this earth, you puny little lame-brained human being? And then I think God is going to point to the cross and say, Jesus suffers just like that mouse does when your cat hunts it down and kills it. God is not the perpetrator of suffering. God is the victim of suffering. So my theistic evolutionist position's got some problems in it. But you know, we do the best we can. I think we have to say honestly that if we love the truth and we get knowledge with integrity from our natural scientists friends, we just have to work hard to put those things together. God gave us minds. I guess we should use them. So in February, the Wesley Nexus in the Washington area and churches around the world tried to spend a weekend scratching our heads and once again to understand the relationship between a biblical faith and evolutionary science. And the one thing that I would like to emphasize is that even though a war is going on, it's not between religion and science. One more thing. The future of evolution. Will we human beings, with our wrenches and screwdrivers, get into the human genome and actually design the future of evolution of the human race? Will we do that? One of the biggest worldwide controversies in science today is CRISPR gene editing. It's an editing technique where a laboratory researcher can get into the genome of a baby that will govern, well, or at least influence his or her genetic makeup and be passed through the germline from generation to generation. We could, through genetic engineering, influence the future of the human race. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? A lot of scientists are saying that's a bad idea. It's unethical. It's immoral. Why? Well, we don't know what's going to happen. We might end up like Prometheus or Frankenstein, creating future generations of human beings that are grotesque, huh? Well, this is an important controversy, and I'd just like to conclude by reminding you about IRIS, the Institute of Religion in an Age of Science, holding a conference this coming summer at Star Island off the coast of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We're going to deal with the science of gene editing and the perils and promises of intervening in human evolution. Be there or be square. Bye.